Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Hawkeye Rides live stream. I'd like to thank everybody that came out last week and everybody that's joined the membership. It is out. You get exclusive perks, which is detailed with a little video and all the descriptions between the two different tiers, which also the top tier will give exclusive shorts to those memberships. Hopefully everybody had a happy holiday and is looking forward to the new year. For some auto news to start off with, Nissan and Honda merge. It is still in the works. It's going to hopefully be complete by next year by 2026 in August is the date that the merge is hopefully going to be fully complete. And the major reason why it's not as a bailout, it is for the auto industry of Nissan and Honda so they can develop EVs and kind of get up to date with technology and the innovation of new vehicles. And for some other auto news, Michael actually sent me a message earlier before the live stream asking about a Audi S3 and a BMW M235i. For the M235i, you're going to decrease in torque for 2025. It's basically the same HP and torque as the X1, X2. And the interior obviously is going to be updated in the exterior as well. But the S3 will actually have more performance. They're going to have over 20 horsepower, more over 15 pound-feet of torque. So you may want to look at the Audi S3 opposed to the BMW M235i. And when's the next Porsche video? Well, we actually released a Porsche video last night. It was supposed to be released today. Somehow I ticked the wrong time for 12:15. I guess I put AM instead of PM. So the Porsche EV was released. Yep, we already discussed about the Honda and Nissan merge. That was the first thing that we touched bases on, where the full completion of that should be in 2026 in August. It's not really like a struggling type of merge. The way the CEOs is talking about it, like I was explaining in the beginning, it is talking about them expanding their EV and upgrading their technology to self-driving vehicles to get up to date with times, because the technology costs quite a bit of money to do so. So kind of makes sense to merge so that way you can lower the cost, because Honda's already done that with GMC with their EVs, even going into their Acura line. I am still looking for a new vehicle. We're still talking to Infinity, actually, because of all the issues that I've been having with my personal vehicle. And they are kind of been back and forth, back and forth. I'm assuming a lot of that also is because of this merge that's going on. So as soon as that is fully done, then we can actually expand and start looking for ourselves a new vehicle. I mean, I already have an SUV and I have a sports car, so we're looking for a convertible at the moment because my sports car is a four-door sedan, and we just want to get something kind of more Florida, I guess you could say. Is your car still at the shop? No, we picked up the Infinity, 2 days ago. We had quite a bit of issues yet again with the massage seats. They had to replace the digital rear view mirror, which it's actually crazy. The digital rear view mirror in an Infinity QX60 cost $2,100. That's how much Infinity paid to give us the part. And they had to add some modules behind the dashboard. And unfortunately, the massage seat is still not working correctly. What options are you looking for? You should get a 4 Series convertible. I was wanting to get an M4 competition convertible, but we're still kind of on the horizon because 2025 they increased the horsepower and torque. I was actually going to get like a 22 model, so pre-owned with maybe a few thousand miles. But after reviewing the new 2025, I have been kind of like, I don't really want to get anything underneath the 2025 because the extra horsepower and torque, the sound deadening, the suspension, the whole vehicle just drives better. 911, I feel, has went really expensive. So I looked at a few of them. I just feel like for the pricing, it would be better you go. I mean, an 8 Series is literally a discounted price for a 911, and you're getting great performance out of that engine, especially if you go M8 competition. I mean, thing is crazy, over 600 horsepower, 553 pound-feet of torque. And if you do convertible 0 to 60, 3 seconds flat. That is pretty crazy. considering it's maybe a buck 50. Whereas if you want a 911 that's comparable to that, you're going to be more in the near $200,000 price. And even if you get something a little less, I mean, the GTS, I believe that gets right at 3 seconds flat. That's about 175, 180 grand. So that's quite a bit of money. The massage seats are not working still. Yes. So the driver's seat massage isn't working. It turns on and off. Are cool. Glad to see it. Ah, thank you, Michael. I appreciate that. What made you get? So we've had two QX60s before, and when we were getting the third one, which is the one that's been having some problems, we actually were going to get a Maserati Levante Modena S, which has the Ferrari engine. We had a deal on both, and family members was saying, you know what, let's just go to the Infinity. We already have a Maserati. Let's not do this again. And the reason why we didn't go the Maserati was the service. They have increased quite a bit on those vehicles. Yeah, we do have heads-up display. I, when I went to the showroom to pick up the vehicle, I went and obviously said hello to my team because I have some team players there as well. And so family did see the new QX80, which I've been telling them about, but the first thing they said was it's too big. So unfortunately, that's out of the question because it's the family vehicle, and if everyone in the family can't drive it, then there's no need to buy it. My favorite Range Rover, I would say either the SE or going into the autobiography because the SE is kind of like you're under $100,000. You can still get some features and it's awesome vehicle. And then if you have obviously an additional 20-ish thousand dollars, the autobiography gives you every single feature. So it kind of unlocks the best of both worlds. And then this week we also teamed up with a new Audi dealership, so we got to do the RS6 Avant, which for the members we're going to have some performance videos coming out, and then the actual full review will come out shortly. We also did the new Q7. I did a Prestige. I didn't do a Prestige. I did a Premium Plus, so it's kind of a middle grade, and I did it purposely so that way you can see what the Q7 gives, because typically we do the Q7 or we'll do a Q7, I mean an SQ7, or we'll do a Q7 Prestige, which is fully loaded more or less, just you're not getting the performance out of the SQ7. We also have some Hyundai videos where we're doing some comparison with a new Elantra SEL Sport, and we're doing a different Elantra comparison. And we did the Palisade Calligraphy Night Edition, which the Palisade is getting a refresh, so something to look on to the horizon because it's going to be more boxy, a more updated interior, which it's actually really needed. Would I love the brand much? Would you ever get a Range Rover? Which Macan S or Cayenne? I would go Cayenne S over the Macan. For a Range Rover, I thought about getting one. It's just the depreciation it's a little hard to swallow. Anytime you buy a vehicle that's $100,000, almost every vehicle is about the same in depreciation. It's around 25 to 35%. EVs, you have to add an additional $7,500 because they give you the tax credit whether you get it or not. So that's why when you drive an EV off the lot, you typically lose like over 40-ish%. That's also why they're able to give you so much better deals. That being said, anytime I buy or look at $100,000 vehicle, the first thing I have to swallow is I'm going to lose about 30 grand driving it off the lot. And it's hard for me to take that with a Range Rover only because it's an SUV. Typically with SUVs, you buy them for the long haul. That being said, as an owner of owning one, I mean, I haven't owned one, but if you are an owner, typically the second or third year, the vehicle is typically like 60-ish to $50,000. So you've lost 50% value almost 100% of the time out of the Range Rover. I do like the Macan. I just feel that because the way they introduced it, I remember when they first came out with it a few years back, it was a big deal for Porsche. They lowered the price of the vehicle to get people in the segment for Porsche, in which people were paying Porsche service, and that's why ultimately they increased the price. And they also had some issues with some of the buyers, and Porsche just didn't want to go down that slot. So ultimately, buying the Macan is kind of a sweet spot per se, but now they've increased the price so much it doesn't even make sense to entertain it. You might as well go into a Cayenne because, like the Porsche that we released last night, and like I said, it was a little bit of a hiccup. It was supposed to be released after the live stream. Um, that one was like right at almost 100 grand. And it had over 20 grand of features. Even when I brought the keys back to my team, I said, why would you guys order a vehicle with this many specs for a mediocre spec Porsche? It just doesn't make sense because when you're at that price, you might as well go to the next tier. They do hold their value better. And while I was with the or the Audi team this past week, we were actually discussing that. And a lot of the reasons why is because they do not offer deals online or on TV. So as you see, Audi has season discounts, Toyota-a-thon, and so forth, so on. When you're doing these discounts, ultimately, you are lowering the brand in the value. So then if someone's giving you 10 grand off, then you know the 10 grand plus the depreciation is going to come off the sticker. I do like Jaguar a lot. I just do not like the direction they're heading. And even when to touch bases on some of the EV things, so even Hertz is dropping like 50% or more of their EV line because the EVs are just not going. And now that we have a new administration coming in a few days, the direction isn't going that way. Even Audi, well, they actually closed down the factory, but they have discontinued the e-tron Q8. So no more Sportback or regular Q8 e-tron. They have discontinued that, which when you're talking about vehicles that's going full EV, and Audi was part of that project, I get it. They closed the factory, but these are also those telltale signs that ultimately times are changing yet again, going away from the EV. So if you are thinking about getting an EV, the time may be now before they discontinue tax credits or try to pull the plug on them like they did back in the late 80s, early 90s when the government was literally seizing these vehicles. Maybe they're good, maybe they're bad. It just depends on the person's preference. For me, it just doesn't really work out. Does Range Rover have specials? I don't really see. No, Range Rover doesn't really have specials. The difference between some automotive industries, to touch bases on that, because I know you asked about Porsche holding its value. So when you are thinking about Range Rover, why does the depreciation and they don't really offer specials? They do have discounts that they offer in other regions. So you may not get those coupons or discounts or even the advertisement. If you look at Porsche, they don't advertise at all. That's another reason why it holds its value. It's kind of like an exclusive club. So when you're buying into that brand, you have to go into the dealership in order to get a discount. Whereas the other ones, you'll see advertisement of a Land Rover Defender or maybe a Range Rover in different areas. You'll see these advertisements, even though they may not show discounts. The fact that they're advertising it also hurts the value because people will come in for the discount. Whereas even Maserati, for instance, they were doing commercials and they do a lot of advertisements where they give $10,000 or $20,000 off of the prior year vehicle. I mean, when you have that, ultimately you add that to your depreciation of 25 to 30%, and that's why you take such a dump when you're driving it off the lot. So for instance, you buy it at 100 grand, now it's worth 75, minus another 10, it's $65,000. That's why when you go to trade it, they say, we'll give you 65, maybe they'll give you 70, maybe they'll give you 60. Now, when you sell it private party, that $10,000 may not hurt you in the depreciation. Range Rovers are expensive to fix. They are not inexpensive vehicles. I mean, when I was with some of my exotic team a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about how people will buy like a Lamborghini, for instance, and then sometimes they'll get upset, like, why is the brake so much money? And the first thought is like, dude, you didn't buy a Toyota. Like, what did you think you bought? Anything that's 100, 200, or 300,000, even if you bought a pre-owned, it's going to be expensive. And that's one thing with Range Rover. When you're at 100 grandish price, you're starting to get to an expensive level. And ultimately, people that buy these vehicles, they that's any vehicle is the second most expensive asset that you could buy. But when you start buying like 100,000 to 150,000, it's kind of a unique area because ultimately those buyers can't buy the $200,000-300,000 one, in which Range Rover entertains the 100 to 150,000 to even $200,000 pricing. That being said, the person that buys the base model is wanting to get the expensive model. Ultimately, all of those models, though, are going to have the same service, in which it affects the buyer, because say you bought the 90 grand one and now you're paying service prices for a $200,000 one. It's not fair, but in the same category, you bought into the brand knowing that it's an expensive brand. Now, if you buy something 50,000 or less, depending on the vehicle, obviously, but if you're looking for luxury, you're expecting to spend a little bit more. Now, are you expecting longevity? Not necessarily. You're expecting more service or a better quality, better build interior, softer materials, and a drive. Oil change are typically a few $100s to 700, maybe $200-300, give or take. Good morning, Sean. Any news about the redesigned Audi? Yes, we did touch bases about that at the beginning. So Audi is doing a lot of refreshes and redesigns on all their vehicles. Even like I was touching bases on the S3, they're adding increasing horsepower and torque. So if you're considering BMW or Audi, you may want to look at Audi because they are doing a lot of amazing things, especially on the A5, the S5, RS5. The interior is getting redesigned finally. I actually threw a little joke at my brother the other day. I said, well, it's a Jetta, but I know it's not a Jetta. There's a lot of interior and updates to it. It's just the way Audi is doing things, and BMW is also doing the same thing, is integrating a lot of the same layout. And they do this purposely because it's easier to ship the product to get it reassembled. So ultimately, what my Volkswagen and Audi dealerships, some of my teams were saying, is the same crate for the front is literally the same for a Volkswagen, Audi, Bentley, and in some cases it can even go into Lamborghini. Depends on the trim, but a lot of cases it is. And even if you go into an SQ8, the back seat belts will have a Lamborghini logo. So just kind of a little cool thing that Volkswagen, Audi, Lamborghini, and Bentley do. They just kind of mix and match things so you can get a really awesome vehicle for a discounted price, which is what Audi actually gives. And when I was at Audi, that was one of the things we were talking about this week, is we have a new team that we're bringing to the channel. It's Audi Lakeland. Awesome dealership, very friendly they were to me. They pulled a bunch of cars off the showroom floor. We did the RS6 Avant Performance. They didn't have the GT. I don't have any word of when that's coming or what dealers, and it's kind of exclusive. There's only a few hundred in North America. But ultimately, we were talking about how you're literally getting detuned Lamborghinis for a fraction of the price. The service is cheaper. The vehicle itself performs just as good or even better because you can even tune it to get the same horsepower and torque for a fraction of the price. So just something to take in consideration. Certified Porsche Cayenne. I would recommend anything that is certified because you're going to pay a premium for it. And in some cases, you can take the certification off. So if you're trying to get a better deal, they will minus $5,000 off the deal, typically, is what they charge for a certification for any luxury to performance vehicle, in which you can still get a certified pre-owned warranty, and you might actually save a few grand. So that is something to also think about if you're making a deal between a Porsche, Range Rover, any high-end vehicles. Instead of saying, okay, I want the certified, they already have it listed as certified. So you know what, just discount the certification, minus $5,000. I don't want it certified. And then when you go into the financing office, you can add the warranty to extend it, which can be cheaper than what the dealership would be charging on the MSRP. Porsche is going to be more expensive on service. Range Rover will be cheaper. The difference between the two, Porsche typically will pick up your vehicle on a flatbed and drop it off, or drop you off a loaner. Now, some dealerships do it to any vehicle. Some dealerships do it only to exclusive Porsche vehicles or certain money value. That's one thing that I always found awesome about Porsches. I mean, literally, you going for an oil change, they come to wherever you want, flatbed you a loaner, and flatbed your vehicle back so you don't get any miles. I mean, that's just crazy. Certification for any vehicle typically just adds a year in unlimited miles or 100,000 miles, depending on the brand. That's why, like I was stating, go for the certification one. And then when you're at the deal or in the table and you're trying to get as much discount as possible, tell them drop the certification and minus $5,000 and we got a deal. That's after you have exhausted every alley, and then you should be able to obtain another $5,000 off the vehicle. Yes, so maintenance does depend on your driving, but all vehicles are starting to do yearly maintenance or 6-month maintenance, where ultimately it will show in your gauge cluster you need a service due. Now, some vehicles will still allow you to erase it, but some of them will not. So if you start getting into luxury vehicles, it'll have like a little wrench or looks like kind of a check engine light, in which ultimately when you can't take that off. You have to go to the dealership or buy a scanner that's a few $100s. You buy the scanner and you can remove it yourself, but you still need to do the oil change, because if you don't do it, then obviously you could make the engine have a lot of sludge buildup, which, funny enough, I was at Infinity a few weeks back, which we were again, actually for 3 weeks I've been at Infinity back and forth. But anyways, when I was at my team, a QX60, I believe it's a 2019 model. The person drove it. They don't even know when the last time they did an oil change. And they took me in the back, showed me the sludge buildup. And it just shows you that when you're talking about vehicles going 10,000 or 12,000 miles for oil change, on certain oils, I don't recommend it at all. Even when you're using full synthetic, I typically maybe 6, 7, 8,000 miles. I try to keep it as clean as possible, especially with these turbos or twin turbo engine. There's just a lot going on, and there's a lot of heat buildup. Ultimately, it's a performance engine. When you're starting to get these type of variants, you want to have a vehicle that's going to last. If you don't care about it, then do the intervals that they say. But if you do care about it, maybe do them a few thousand miles sooner, so that way you get better longevity. Maintenance plans, I do not recommend it, only if you do a maintenance plan that makes sense. So when I was with some of the exotic teams, they said that they have tiers in them. Certain tiers will cover your brakes and your rotor. So if you're considering keeping the vehicle for a long time, then yes, it's a great idea, because you're going to be putting miles on it. But typically with those higher end vehicles, you're not putting that kind of miles. But the reason why it was a good price is I think that tier was like 5,000-ish, but the brakes and rotors itself is over $5,000, and they cover a set of those within 4 years or 50,000 miles. So if that's the case, then that service itself was paid for. But just educate yourself when you're at the table. Drop me a question if I'm available. I try to usually answer questions immediately through my phone, even on the live streams or any which way, so I can help you out best as possible. Because most of the oil changes and tire rotations, things of that nature, is not going to come up to the same price of $2,000 to $5,000 for a service plan. So it doesn't make any sense to do that. Does it pay for stuff or not really? So I already answered that one. Like Porsche maintenance plan, like I just said, it can pay for some things, but ultimately, most of the time you end up spending more money for the maintenance package. That's why you want to ask questions like I was just explaining. Does it cover the brakes? Does it cover the rotors? Because some of them do that. If they don't, then say how many oil changes, does it change the radiator, the transmission flush? Is the transmission flush alone for a Range Rover can be probably about $1,500. So if it covers that and it's $3,000, then I would say it's probably a good deal, because 4 oil changes plus that, plus rotation, plus belts and spark plugs, I mean, you're over $3,000-4,000 quick. Does it pay for the engine? So none of the services are going to pay for the engine. Your bumper to bumper warranty will pay for engine. And then in some cases, because I have seen it with BMW, I have seen it with Toyota, Hyundai's even talked about it, which I thought was crazy, where people were driving the vehicle too hard and they said, we're not going to cover the engine, and that's under full warranty. Now, I would assume if you get a lawyer, a good lawyer, you're going to probably have to spend money on it. They probably would turn it over, in which they would give you a new engine and you could probably make some money off of them. But in the same category, you're going to spend a few $1,000s. I did have maintenance plans on two of my Maseratis and two of my Infinities. And the second Infinity is when we canceled the maintenance plan, because ultimately when we canceled it, they gave us back nearly $300. I didn't spend $300 to finish maintaining the vehicle for the 4 years of standard warranty. And that is where I'm getting at. So they go by miles on the transmission flush, and that was one thing that irritated me, because that was the reason why I bought the second Maserati maintenance plan. They do not cover it unless you get to a certain mile, and they didn't even do like the belts and things like that, which I thought they would, but they didn't, because they said you didn't get to a certain mile. B58 engine is ultimately choice for people buy new cars and don't want problems. Yes, B58 engine is solid. It's very bulletproof. And in most cases, they pair it with the ZF 8-speed automatic transmission, which those two together is like a perfect marriage. I mean, you don't really have to do a lot of maintenance at all. I have a ZF 8-speed in my vehicle currently, and I know I always stress on services, do the recommendations, but ultimately, even dealerships and a lot of the teams stress to not do services on ZF 8-speed automatic transmission, which is kind of stupid. You still want to do it. It's a little pricey. It's around $1,500, but they last around 250 to 300,000 miles with very light services. So when you're starting to consider something that's reliable, you can start looking at the engine codes. BMW engine, the B58, it's an awesome engine. ZF 8-speed automatic transmission, they even put these in Ram trucks. You do have to ask if you don't know. It usually will state something on the sticker price, or do a little research, check out any of the videos. We usually talk about it as well. Certified specials, yes. So certified, ultimately, Porsche, they don't really offer specials, like I said, but if it's at a different dealership, well, it's certified. So if it's a certified Porsche, it has to be at a Porsche dealership to be certified. They're going to tell you it's a special, but you'll have to go in there to actually make a deal. They don't really stress these things. Now, on the website, they might say, oh, it's discounted this or that, but that's not something that's discounted through social media. That's not something that's discounted through on TV. So it's more of an in-house special, like I said. If you're really wanting to get the Porsche and you're wanting to get certified, like I said, I would go into a dealership, talk to them, get to the lowest deal possible, and then say, you know what, I don't want the certification minus $5,000, and more than likely you'll get a steal of a deal. They do. So Porsche, they give you a loaner car. Any type of luxury vehicle, that even Lexus, Acura, any vehicle that is luxury, they will give you a loaner as long as you schedule your appointment. So what that means is you literally just call them. What I usually do is I call them on my way to work, and I schedule like a week or two in advance, so that way I have a loaner. Because otherwise, you're going to sit in the dealership, in which, I mean, I review vehicles for a living, so I'm always at dealerships. I don't really mind, but the last thing I want to do is sit for 3-4 hours while they're doing an oil change, watching animals on a TV or news, because they don't usually have a lot of entertaining things there. So schedule your appointment, you'll get a loaner, and they'll call you when the vehicle's done. In most cases, if it's a luxury vehicle, you'll typically have a loaner from either a day to a week, sometimes 2 weeks, depending on how much stuff that you need done. But it's just a better experience overall, because you just go in, go out. And in some cases, they'll do valet. Some of the premium luxury, meaning like Acura, Lincoln, Cadillac, Infinity, those type of vehicles, Lexus, if I didn't say it, they usually don't do as much valet service. Even Audi doesn't really do so much valet service. You typically have to start going into like Porsche in order to get that service. Some cases, BMW, it just depends on the dealership, will give you the valet service. But usually It's been up and down since COVID. They still use that as an excuse, which is ridiculous in my book. Cayenne Turbo, yeah, I mean, it's a perfect everyday vehicle. So when you buy a Porsche, it's not just about performance, but it's also an everyday driving vehicle. When you go turbo for the Cayenne, you're getting that performance, you're getting some luxury in the interior. So you have the fun to drive, you have the everyday drive, and it's something that lasts quite a while. Typically, when you're getting any type of turbo Porsche, you will notice a lot of people don't drive them, but they are meant to be driven. That's why you can see some with 40, 50, 60, 70, to even over 100,000 miles, which I think is awesome. Because if you're going to buy these 100,000+ vehicles, even if whatever vehicle you buy, put miles on it. Who cares? You bought it to enjoy it. Yes, so Range Rover does valet as well. Again, these things depend on the dealership. Some dealerships have discontinued it and they're re-entertaining them. Some dealerships are just, I hate to say it, they're just cheap. They don't want to give you extra service when you paid all that extra money. And that's why in some cases I walk away from a deal, because I'm just like, dude, you expecting me to pay X amount, but you're not giving me even the service for the vehicle. I know it sounds like I'm picky, but I also need to have, you know, a give and take. I do. I like the Cayenne GTS. I feel it's an awesome vehicle. Pricing isn't too bad. It's still quite expensive because Porsche has went up quite a bit on their price. It used to be a few years ago that Porsche was not discounted. It was like the sweet spot vehicle. But ultimately, since Audi has increased and done so much more in performance, they have increased the price to Porsche, making, I don't know, I guess they think people are not going to cross shop in between the two. Porsche Connect, all these app services through your phone, they're not necessarily needed. I would entertain them while they're under your. Usually, when you buy the vehicle new or certified, they'll give you so many months or a year or so for free. I would use it then and see if it's worth it. I personally don't use any of those things. Infiniti has something that's called Infiniti Personal Assistant. We had it for 8 years, literally, and when we used it, it never really worked. Like, you call and you talk to an assistant through like an OnStar, and they'll send you GPS coordinates and things like that. But they also say things like, oh, they'll book you air flights or hotels, in which they give you ideas, but you can search it just as quick. What about hybrid? I love the hybrid. The hybrid is awesome. Um, the only thing about Porsche with hybrid is the battery is very expensive. I think we entertained talking about it a few live streams ago, where my neighbor got rid of his Cayenne because the battery was getting ready to go bad. His service advisor said, and the battery was like 25 grand, and it was only like 4.5-year-old car. It's kind of expensive. Do you like soft closed doors? I do. When I start, it depends on the pricing. So soft closed doors, when I'm at a 70+ thousand dollar price, like say I go into an Acura MDX Type S, I love the refresh. We have the new refresh. They touched up the infotainment screen, some things on the exterior as well. They didn't do anything with horsepower and torque, but we have the review coming. But they still don't offer soft closed doors. When you're at a $70,000 to $80,000 price or anything higher, I feel that they should at least give you a package for that. And in some models, they should throw it in there because you're already at $100,000, and at that price, you're wanting to get all of the luxury amenities. Is it gas or electric? I don't know. What's the question? Hybrids? Hybrid vehicles are a mixture of gas and electric, but they don't use electric like a plug. They use a supplemental battery that's by the combustion engine. And whenever you're braking and doing different maneuvers in the vehicle, it can recharge the battery, which will push in more power to the engine. Hence, like the M5, we have a review on that. It is, well, that's a plug-in hybrid, so that's a bad one. Let's say like a Prius, for instance, the hybrid technology, it is recouping. Like, if you let off the gas, the engine will build up it'll add energy to the battery, the same thing with the braking. And then whenever you're pushing the gas, that extra power will go back into the engine. So that way it has more power to it. That's why there's two different power variants for horsepower and torque, adding that electric battery. Do you recommend a Taycan? So I actually looked at one this week, the Taycan S, and it's literally a 24 model, I believe. Yeah, 24, and they want 90 grand. It only has like 5,000 miles. I thought, man, this would be the perfect EV vehicle because that's over $200,000. Look at the depreciation the guy took. Imagine what they took on trade, which is funny because I talked to another exotic dealer this past week as well, and we were talking about the, gosh, what was it? Not the Rivian, but the other electric vehicle. He'll come to me here in a second. And he said that the Air, I forget what it is, the Air, the Lucid, and it was the top trim. These vehicles are typically like near $200,000, and the person had it for like a year and a half-ish. So he gave her $75,000 to buy it. Now, obviously, they didn't sell it for that cheap, but he gave it to her for trade. So imagine how much depreciation these electric vehicles have. And that's what I'm getting at. So you have to minus the tax credit plus 25 to 35% driving it off the lot. And in some cases, that particular vehicle, they didn't have any in the whole country for sale. So he just made up a price and she took it. And he even said, like, I offered her probably 30 grand too less, which is even worse. She literally depreciated her vehicle over 100%. I mean, like 110%, which it should have only been about 80-ish%, which is still crazy for an EV. But if you buy an EV, I would recommend keep the darn thing for the long haul, because as soon as you buy it and get rid of it, if you have some kind of range anxiety or something, just try to forget that stuff. Drink some coffee or something, get some excitement into you. They usually have pretty good power because you're going to lose a lot if you trade a brand new EV. Yes, yeah, they do. Porsche electric vehicles depreciate crazy. I agree with you heavily with that, George. I mean, even with the Audis, like if you look at the e-trons, the same thing. It's just a lot of it also is because of range. They don't have a lot of range with the vehicles, but with Porsche, they came out with two variants, which was, I think, stupid. You have the high end and you got a cheap vehicle, in which a lot of people don't. It's still not cheap by any means, don't get me wrong, but it's cheaper because it was, I think, what, 70, 80 grand, and the other's like nearly 200 grand. Like, what the heck? Why would you do such a difference in MSRP? Because ultimately, when you're trading those vehicles in, most people are thinking it's the more expensive variant. So even if it has the S at the end and it's the more expensive one, chances are you're still going to lose your rear end, because they're going to say, dude, like, nobody wants this car because there's no range. Performance is awesome, but if you drive it too much performance, you're going to kill the batteries, which doesn't make sense. Because if you drive a gas variant vehicle, yes, it can affect the engine and the livelihood if you dog it all the time. However, if you dog an EV, especially at the beginning, it typically destroys the battery quicker than a gas variant engine, which I'm still looking into different texts and research on that as well to make sure it's 100% accurate. But from what I've seen so far, it's pretty darn close, which when you're spending that kind of money, that's crazy. My favorite Porsche color, I like the Miami blue because it's just unique. It stands out. Every time you see it, you will actually look twice, like, oh wow. And it's kind of like a Dravid gray metallic. It's a complete different color, but I'm saying for in the sense that you look twice. So BMW that's their color, and it's a dark gray color. When you see these type of colors, they're just kind of rare. So the Miami blue, it's very light blue, but it's also bright, in which even dirty, it looks nice. For Range Rover, unfortunately, they only have realistically, Range Rover only has like 4 colors. They have 7 total colors, but the 3 other colors are basically white with a touch of, or a hint of, a different color. So in the review for the Range Rover autobiography that's coming, that's one thing that I complained about. I said, in interior, they only have like 4 colors. I feel like automotive industries are just getting really inexpensive and cheap with customers with this. They just want to give white, black, silver. And before you would have a ton of colors. Honda does the same thing. Nissan does the same thing. It's hard to get a lot of colors unless you start going into expensive vehicles, which shouldn't be the case. Yes, you can get custom colors on anything. If you want to spend more money, that's not a problem. But to only offer you certain colors, and even when I review the vehicles, I'm sure everyone's noticed, I try not to just do white, black, and silver. So like the Q7 that we have coming out, it's a weird silver color. I think it's called satellite something. I believe that's what it was. Satellite metallic. It looks different than silver, but ultimately, when I go to the dealerships and talk to different teams, I always tell them I don't want a white black car unless it's like a Hyundai Calligraphy Palisade, the Hyundai Palisade Calligraphy Night. Black or white looks awesome in that, but then all of their vehicles are black and white or that maroon color. Again, any vehicle you can do any type of custom cover, especially custom colors, especially once you start to get to a different or more expensive vehicle. The dealership will entertain it. You could take it to motorsports. I would recommend you just do a wrap if you're really wanting to go that route. The wrap would be the lesser of the two. To offer the gas-powered Macan, they were said. Yes, I actually was very happy that Porsche still offers a gas-powered Macan because we have the EV. It just released last night. It was supposed to release after the live stream. Like I said at the beginning, I accidentally put AM instead of PM. Sometimes that happens. But ultimately, even with this electric movement, I touched bases with it at the beginning. A lot of the automotive industry is starting to steer away from it, and they're scaling back. Hertz is also cutting back production about, I think it's 35 to 50%. They're cutting back their EV lines for rental cars. Audi has discontinued the e-tron Q8, whether the Sportback or regular back. They said it's due to closing the factory, but I also feel like it's a little bit more so because where Porsche offers the gas variant for the Macan as well as the EV, I'm starting to see this trend going. But then when I was looking at research like vehicles like Maserati, for instance, they're still shooting for 2018 to go full electric, or 2028 to go full electric, which now with the new administration, I'm imagining, because I'm already seeing it and I'm sure everybody's reading in auto news, that every company is scaling back or they're teaming up with other variants to do electric vehicles. So these are those signs that saying that the electric vehicles are going to kind of go in the back end where they're not going to be advertised as much. And it can be a good thing. My thing is, instead of going EV, instead of going hybrid, we know hydrogen is a good source in which we could put that in our combustion engine now. So why don't we, not me and you, but the auto industry, work on technology to move that forward? So that way, instead of worrying about fossil fuels, because even with batteries, now one thing that I will say on a side note with batteries is 95 to 97% of the battery can be reused. The cobalt that comes out of it, they can literally separate it and put it in a new battery. It never dies. So that is awesome. But in the same category, you're not going to have enough of recycled cobalt to put into new variants. So therefore, you're still using a lot of fossil fuel. So that's why I feel that we all know that hydrogen is the way. We should actually start going that route in engineering vehicles. The turbocharged thing is awesome. Supercharged thing is awesome, but we're not really engineering anything new. We're literally going back to the 80s, in which most of those vehicles had some problems because turbocharged engines typically have some problems, especially when you're putting it on an everyday vehicle. And going to a turbocharged 3-cylinder, there's pluses and minuses to it, but then when you're using the belt system inside it, I mean, even I traded one of my Infinities because the first variant had a belt drive, and I said, you know what, that's not going to last 100,000 miles. I literally traded it the next year and lost $15,000 because I said, you know what, I don't want a vehicle that, God forbid, down the road I got to spend $6,000 to fix the engine. I want the damn chain in the engine. So we know technology that works. We should go these routes. On the Porsche Macan, can you add heads-up display aftermarket? So you can add anything aftermarket. The thing is, when you're doing aftermarket spec, especially to more technical vehicles, so Audi and Porsche are doing a lot of innovative things with technology. So what that means is if you want to add a 360-degree reverse camera, heads-up display, you want to update the stereo system, in some cases it may not work correctly. And then even when it does work, it may be intermittent where it comes in and out, or it just doesn't function 100% properly, or it can pop a check engine light. There's just a lot of they put a lot of innovation in their technology, which again brings me back to, I don't know why we don't do that with the damn engines. Like, what the heck? Why are we so freaking lazy that we're using an extension cord to change things that doesn't change anything? But yeah, and I'm sorry if I get a little excited about it. I just don't understand the concept of not trying to move forward with technology, because they're doing that with self-driving technology. They're doing it with safety, for reverse parking, for forward collision, for pedestrian detection, blind spot monitoring. I mean, the darn things, they literally have cameras overseas that can see your rear view mirrors, and they don't even have rear view mirrors when you get into Audis, which is, I saw it and I thought that was just amazing. But I mean, in the same category, it's like, dude, you're doing all this, and then when we have a car wreck, you're totaling the car because that technology is so damn expensive, but the engine is worth nothing. Do you like ambient lights? I do like ambient lights. My new vehicle has it. My older vehicle somewhat has it. It's like a dull light because they didn't really have LEDs in 2016. They did, but it was kind of an upgrade, and apparently for some vehicles, they're just not doing that. Xeon lights was the big deal then. Still early here in Hawaii. Need more coffee. Aloha. What time is it over in Hawaii, George? Or Greg, sorry. Porsche and Range Rover are the safest cars. Well, I don't know if Porsche and Range Rover is the 647. Oh, man. I'm sorry about that. Let us know in the comments if you guys want to change the time for the live stream, so that way we can build it up more. Here it's 11 a.m., so it's not so early, but we can do it later on. I'll start posting some things also in the community tab, so that way we can have more people come in, because I don't want you guys having to wake up too darn early. Texas. Oh, that's awesome. Well, or are you the same time? I know some areas in Texas can be different time. What's your time in Texas? Well, going back to the question while we wait, Porsche, Range Rover, safest cars. I wouldn't say they're the safest cars. Volvo is pretty safe, but then I have seen in cases with the newer Volvos, especially when you go into the recharge, so you're an hour difference. Gotcha. That they catch on fire. With Porsche, Range Rover, they can be more solid of a vehicle. Volvo, it's a cool vehicle. I didn't like it at first until I started reviewing it and getting more involved with the team and brand. I just think their technology is really all over the place, because they do a turbocharge, they do an engine. So it's a combustion engine, a turbocharge, a hybrid, and in some cases a plug-in hybrid. There's just a lot going on. Like, when you have 4 different things going on underneath the hood, just clean it up. I mean, that's just too much damn technology. But yeah, like I said, for everybody that is viewing, let us know if we can alter the time. I mean, we can do like a 2-3 o'clock, so that'd be 3-4 hour difference, so make it a little bit easier so everybody's not too coffeeed up, because I would really like everybody to make it. And I've been trying to look at the analytics to see and zero in what time would be better, but it's tough because when you look at that, it literally shows you all the countries and different times, and unless you guys state it, it makes it a little bit more complicated for me to find a time. I would consider a Volvo, but like I said, because of me knowing what's underneath the hood, it's tough. Do they last? In some cases, they do. Some of the older variants, I mean, there was a woman, she just turned in one of her older wagons. She hit the 1,000,000 miles, and I mean, it just shows you right there, like literally 1,000,000 miles on a vehicle. That is impressive. The newer vehicle, the newer vehicles, I don't know if you're going to hit that much. I mean, I think the ambient lighting is cool. In some cases, I feel that it can be a little bit too much. Mercedes, BMW does a good job, but it's literally like driving a car with the lights on in the interior. You obviously get used to it. And it's cool that when you put it into sport mode, it changes and you can change 64 different colors. A lot of the automotive industry is scaling back on that to like 8 colors now. I've noticed, in which when I read it and I talk to them, like, dude, you went from 64 to 8. Like, what the heck? Well, nobody really cares, is what they say. And I'm like, well, apparently not. But I don't feel that you should have to pay for ambient lighting. I think that that should be a standard if they're putting it in a certain trim, but they should be able to offer it with or without. Because it might be cool just to have, like, sports car without ambient lighting in the interior, just so that way you get the feel of driving the vehicle. Yes, Porsche has ambient lighting. Almost every vehicle has it now. I mean, you can get it in Hondas. You go into the inline and the dashboard lights up, door panel. It's kind of crazy that, they're giving you these things in inexpensive vehicles. 911 are everyday vehicles. That's why they're kind of an awesome vehicle to have. They're not necessarily considered exotic, which is kind of crazy because when you're thinking about pricing for a 911, it is right at exotic money. But in some groups, they don't allow you unless you have like GT RS or a GT2 or GT3 RS. If you just have like a normal 911, and I'm not meaning it like somebody that can afford every vehicle, because they are super expensive. A 911 is typically 110, 120 grand. But if you just have those trims, that's kind of getting your feet wet with the 911. If you start going into the GTs, then you're starting to show that you're wealthy as hell. And God bless if you can afford either of the two. But I would get a 911, do like a Carrera S, have a convertible. It's about $115. I would get a pre-owned one. They're still going to be close to $100,000. And in some cases, some Porsche dealerships are still adding a dim mat. The good thing is haggling is available. So like I've been saying through this whole live stream, don't just go and settle for a deal. Haggle them. So that way you can actually get a deal on the vehicle. But like when I review the 911, I think that's what I was going to get at. The Cayman is actually a better vehicle, but Porsche kind of lowers everything in it to make the 911 better, because the 911 is the iconic vehicle for Porsche. So it wouldn't make sense to have the Cayman be faster, even though it is better. Dynamically speaking, it's the vehicle itself, the engineering on the Cayman, it's known to be better, but the 911, they give you all of the performance out of it, whereas the Cayman, they don't do so much. The Panamera, awesome vehicle. We have a review on it. I just feel like with the pricing, you would be better off to go to an RS6 Avant or an RS7 Sportback, whichever of the two. The RS6 Avant, I think, will hold its value a little bit better than the RS7 Sportback, only because it is a wagon. I would do a certified, but when you're going for the Panamera, because they have a refresh this year, one thing to note, the depreciation, when they do a refresh on a vehicle, you typically lose another 10-ish to 15% off of the vehicle. And then depending on miles, it can also depreciate another 5 to 10%. And if it's under warranty or not under warranty, that can depreciate another 10 to 15%. So add these variables up, and what that comes out to as a conclusion is if you're getting, say, a 2014 Panamera, you may get about 45% off going that route instead of getting a refreshed. And if it's certified, like I said, if you can get 45% off, meaning the vehicle is 135 MSRP, you get it for well under 100, just a little bit. That extra $5,000 for the certification, knock that off, you might be able to get a really awesome deal, but you're not going to be getting the updated Panamera. However, you're still getting a Porsche. So I think it's a win-win with that category. And I would recommend, if you're looking at a 2014, I would say go even as low as like a 2022. So that way with low miles, you'll get a huge savings. And if it's still under warranty, you can add a certified warranty afterwards, after you walk out of the dealership, and you get a huge deal for that particular vehicle. I get up early too, guys. So usually for the live stream, I get up a couple hours early to set up a little bit. I have to obviously do the thumbnail and whatnot. We are going to be doing some dealership stuff. Wanted to touch bases on that as well. A lot of the teams were saying it's all right to go to the dealership, just go there. They'll have a little spot for us so we can do live stream. And if you guys want to see their inventory, we can get the keys and have the exclusive access to do so. Any vehicle, even if it's a Porsche, can last a long time. It really depends on how you drive it in your service. So do certified cars come with the regular warranty too? Yes. So every vehicle, as long as it's under warranty, still comes with warranty. So even if the dealership says no warranty, it still has a factory warranty, unless it's already came out of the 3-year 36,000 or 4-year 48,000. So that is one. It's a great question actually, because a lot of people, even in my reviews, they'll say, wow, that car has no warranty. It still has a warranty through the manufacturer. It just means that the dealership isn't giving you any extra warranty. So if you buy a used vehicle that's a 2025 and it says that, I mean, just make sure, because if it's a Tesla, sometimes the Tesla could have a void warranty, which when we did the Cybertruck, they were saying how this could void the warranty, this could void the warranty. Now, in those cases, yes, they can completely void the warranty, and any vehicle can, just obviously make sure. But usually 99% of the time, you'll have factory warranty still. Now, for a certified warranty, you can only get it certified if you buy it through the same dealership. Meaning, if you buy a Honda from a Toyota dealership, you cannot certify it. But if you buy a Honda from a Honda dealership, they can certify it. Now, some vehicles they may not be able to certify. They'll also let you know on that if that is something that you are concerned about. But most of the time, all the vehicles that's on their lot, if they're selling those vehicles, meaning if it's a BMW and they're selling BMW, they can certify it. It does take a process. So ultimately, if it's not certified and it's something that you want and they'll do it, they're going to charge you extra money. Sometimes they'll throw it in as a deal, but it may take a few hours. You might not have the car that day. Maybe you'll get it the next day. That's the only thing. But in that case, they'll probably give you a loaner anyways. The certification can take anywhere from 2 hours to 4 or 5 hours. The newer it is, the quicker it is. The less miles, the quicker it is, because they check everything through the whole vehicle. So it's literally like a bumper-to-bumper check, and they're checking out the information on the computer as well. So that way they can see how the vehicle was driven to see if they can certify it. Because if the vehicle was tracked, then that's where you would lose your warranty as well as a certified warranty. So it is kind of cool if you're wanting to get a certification for the vehicle. And in some cases, you can get that. So if you buy it new, you can always go to the dealership and certify it as well. And in some cases, buying it used, you could do the same thing. As long as it's still under factory warranty, you could take it to, say you bought a Lexus, you could take it back to the Lexus dealership later on and get it certified. Just make sure before you do that, if it's pre-owned, you ask the dealerships around you that have, or the dealership that you bought it from, if they'll do it, because it kind of depends on the dealership. But for a brand new vehicle, you can always certify it through pretty much any of those vehicles. So if you bought a Acura, any Acura dealership should be able to certify it. You could probably just make a phone call and do the same thing. Do certified cars, can you trade it in if you don't like it? So you could trade any vehicle in. You will lose value though. So if you buy a vehicle and say you get cold feet, 99% of the time, there is a 24-hour period where you can return the vehicle. And I forget the terminology, but in certain states, sometimes they're a little bit harder. And they also have to post it in their dealership where they do not accept it. But it's something like, not cold feet, but where you basically change your mind. Buyer's remorse is what it's called, buyer's remorse. So they usually have a 24, and in some states, in some counties, they'll have 48 hours. But most of the time, they don't like to entertain that, because if you bought it and you go the next day to trade it, you're going to lose money. So I would recommend taking a couple days at least. I have stated before in reviews and throughout, when I personally buy a vehicle, I usually take 2 to 3 weeks. And people might think, well, that's crazy. What if you just buy a Hyundai? I actually did buy a Hyundai years ago, and that took me 3 days to buy. I went to one dealership, the deal kept changing multiple times, and it was sad because I had a 2-seat car and I have 5 in my family. And I said, I have to buy the car today. And I was borrowing a vehicle. The vehicle I borrowed, the battery kept dying. I finally got home. We made the deal. I told them, can you just deliver it to my work because I got to work. And after we made the deal, I called them. They said, oh, it's going to be another $3,000. I said, why? We forgot this. I said, you know what? It's all right. I'll eat $3,000. Can you bring me the car? Then I called 2 hours later. They said, oh, it's going to be another $2,000. I said, dude, like, this is ridiculous. So I hung up the phone. I called another hour. They said, you have to pay full MSRP. I said, you know what? And then I went like 3 hours away the next day and got a pre-owned vehicle that was a significant discount, the same exact car. But what I'm getting at is don't buy a vehicle the same day. It's better that you walk away from the deal, think about it, because it's an expensive purchase, and then re-entertain it. You could tell them to hold the deal. 99% of the time, they will hold the deal for you up to 24 to 48 hours. Or say, you know what, I just stopped by chance because I do need a new vehicle. We're going on a vacation tomorrow. I don't want to buy the vehicle today. You could tell them that after you make the deal. Because I don't want to put the miles on it while I go on the vacation. When I come back and I buy it, and they usually will say yes. I've had that happen when we bought our second Infiniti. It took 3 months to buy the third Infiniti. It took me 3 months to buy that because ultimately I went up to DC and then the family changed their mind. So we went back. When we went back again, and then even going back again, it took a week for us to get the deal, which we were debating between 2 different vehicles. On Porsche, can you add remote start aftermarket? So again, anything that you add, it can and might not function the same way, but yes, you can add it. I would recommend going to like a motorsport because some of the do-it-yourselfer things is a little bit complicated, especially when you start going into Porsche. Would you ever order a car? So my last car that, besides this Infiniti, the car before the Infiniti, I did. I ordered the Maserati, the second Maserati I had. It took 2 months to build. We started the build within 3 weeks. So it was already being built, but we were able to alter the build. So instead of waiting 3 months, we waited 2 months for the vehicle. And ultimately, we had a Maserati to drive for 2 months. We didn't have to worry about it. It was actually kind of funny because my kids, Issa and Yusuf, they still remember. They're like, when you used to drive the car, you would be like, oh, it's like a rent-a-car. And I was like, it wasn't, but it is what it is. I did a blue. It's the same color as the one that I had prior. I forget the exact name. It's kind of an interesting name, but I feel like Maseratis, the blue color for Maserati is more traditional, where like Mercedes, I feel silver is kind of the traditional. BMW, blue or silver is traditional. I like the traditional colors of vehicles because I think it makes it stand out a little bit more. It's not a custom color, but it's a very hard color to match up. So obviously I've had the car now maybe 9 years. So now I have some little marks here and there. And to do any touch-ups, they don't have touch-up paint for it because there's like metallic flakes in the paint. And the way they paint the newer vehicles is a little bit more unique than the older vehicles. So they do like hard paint on the top, and then on the lower it kind of fades. So it's like 2 different paint type colors. They do this on all vehicles. So like the fender will not have the same paint look as the hood or the front bumper. It will be a little bit less, but you're not going to be able to notice it with your eyes. Would you ever get another one? I am looking to get another vehicle, like I stated at the beginning. I don't know if I'll order another vehicle because it's quite expensive. Where I keep these particular vehicles for so long, it's okay. But if I was to buy something and just get rid of it, no. Would you get a G-Wagon? Do you like those? I do like the G-Wagon. I saw the square box, they like to call it. I saw one 2 days ago when we went to Infiniti and Acura and Audi. They had one at my Mercedes teams had one, and they also have the AMG GT, which I want to make an appointment to go see that before they get rid of it. They got a 63S, awesome vehicle. The G-Wagon is awesome. The newer ones, I think they're a little bit better with suspension and giving better sound deadening. Performance is amazing. The only reason why I wouldn't get a G-Wagon is because you're not really going to use it for what it's worth. I know where you're from in Texas, I don't know exactly where, but in some areas you could do some crazy off-roading. In Florida, we don't really have anything for off-roading. So it's kind of a purposeless, it doesn't have a lot of purpose here instead of just you're trying to look like a celebrity. I mean, if you can afford it, God bless. Nothing wrong with that. Okay. Yeah, in Tampa, we don't have anything that's like off-road. They do have some areas like in the woods, but I wouldn't take it there and scratch it up. Why don't they have heads-up display like Range Rover and good off-roading? Yeah, Range Rovers are great for off-roading as well. And fording through water is awesome. I mean, you can go over right at 3 feet. I think it's like 34 inches, which is crazy. Unfortunately, like I say in almost every Range Rover video, most people that have the vehicle doesn't take it into water like that. And the person that does, it's typically like 20 years old at that point. But people don't buy Range Rover for off-road. Yeah, I know. They buy it for the luxury and the status. You get a lot of luxury with it, and you're going to be, looked at a little differently. I know when I first bought my first Maserati, I actually went to return it several times because the first week I was pulled over twice just to see who's driving the vehicle. And then ultimately, every time I would go somewhere, people were like, oh my God, they're looking at me like, who's got that car? Who's that? And even when I went to a gas station, it was funny because I know some professional footballers that used to play for the Bucks. They're retired now. And one of the Buccaneers was at the same gas station as me. And I was talking to him and they're like, oh, I bet he has the Maserati, that rich football player. And I'm like, dude, this is just crazy. So I actually called the dealership several times. I said, can I just return the car? Because I don't want this status. I bought the car for me because I like driving the vehicle, in which my neighbors didn't even know I had it for like 6 months because I parked the cars in the garage. They found out only because I was cleaning the car and I would get up early in the morning to clean it while they were sleeping. But one day I cleaned it and I took it for a drive. And when I was pulling out of my driveway, they walked in the middle of the road to see who has the vehicle. So that's the only thing that kind of sucks when you're buying these expensive vehicles. You have this where people are just not bothering you, but you don't want all of this attention. Usually when you buy the vehicle, you're buying it because you enjoy the vehicle, not because you want cops following you. Even Issa was in the car when I got pulled over, and the cop was just random nonsense, just pulling us over for no reason. And it happens. I probably been pulled over 10, 15 times with the vehicle. When you live, you see luxury cars. Yes, I know. And that's the thing too. Like where we live at, we do have a lot of luxury vehicles. They are starting to get popular with surprisingly, I'm starting to see Urus all over the place. But even watching clips from California, it's such a common car, and it's surprising because you're talking $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 vehicles just driving around everywhere, and it's like, wow. I mean, I'm happy to see that. That means people are wealthy and they're doing great, which is awesome because it gives everybody inspiration to do better. It's just crazy to see that. And even like maybe 2 weeks ago, I saw the Rolls Royce pulling out of a racetrack gas station. I was like, wow, it's getting gas at racetrack. Okay. I get coffee from there. I have the app. It's awesome coffee. And they do some decent deals on like hot dogs and pizza. I have to keep the dad bod. Just a joke. Yeah, California, you do see them everywhere. Same thing with Range Rovers and Porsches. Yeah, very common car. Even when you go overseas, sometimes you see these vehicles so commonly, and you're just like, wow, people have that kind of car. That's awesome. Because usually when I review a vehicle, sometimes I don't see the vehicle on the road for a while. So when I see it, I'm just like, holy crap, they have that. Yes, it was the Cullen. I was shocked. It was like, and it was the God, what was it? It was the upgraded. My son always talks about it. It had the damn symbol on it. I forget the name. It'll come to me in a second. But the car was like $700,000+, that Rolls Royce. I was shocked. Bentleys, I don't really see them everywhere. I seen maybe 3 or 4 of them, typically older ones, because you can start getting them now in the 70s, which they have a lot of miles. I wouldn't recommend buying some of those vehicles at those miles were pre-owned because, like for instance, the starter is literally you have to take um, more or less the whole engine bay down in order to get to the starter. So a starter that would typically cost you just a few $100s, maybe 1,000, it's going to cost you probably $3,000, $4,000, if not $10,000 to fix. I do like Bentley. I just think that it's crazy how much it would cost to fix. Yeah, they are very popular for the Rolls Royce. I mean, it's an amazing vehicle. I just feel like in some categories, the price is just starting to go so crazy for MSRP. It's hard for me to, when I go into Porsche, when I go into Lamborghini, which we're still working with some of the teams, they haven't had a lot of inventory, so that's why we haven't done anything for review purposes. It's expensive. I mean, it's a lot of money, and then the services on the vehicle. If you go Rolls Royce, Lamborghini, you're talking $3, $4, $5, $10,000, and even if you buy a pre-owned, you're still paying that same service. Yeah, they're very expensive. Range Rover is going to be less expensive to fix than Rolls Royce. I would recommend Range Rover over that, unless if you have the money. I mean, more power to you. There's absolutely nothing wrong with buying something nice. It's just hard for me to swallow that price because I also put in pricing for performance and the luxury. I know the luxury is awesome and it's very unique, but in the same category, like it's just a lot of car. I thought about buying a Bentley years ago whenever we went to get the Maserati, and the Bentley dealership was a bit rude. They even told me, if you're okay with driving off the lot, losing $60,000, $80,000, this car's for you. And I'm like, why would you tell a buyer that? And then like Aston Martin, I thought of even buying one of those. We didn't buy the Bentley. I was thinking it a GT Continental. The Aston Martin, we didn't buy in that because it's statistically listed as kind of like a vehicle that people don't usually like after they buy them. Now, the newer ones are working more with AMG, which again, this is why I don't understand some of the MSRP, because you're paying $200,000-$300,000 for an Aston Martin that's using AMG technology, engine, sometimes transmission. You might as well just buy a darn AMG, save the money. It's better that way. And AMG is going to have a better exhaust because they have to tweak the exhaust differently when it goes into an Aston Martin. And the same thing with like Bentley, because they have an RSQ8 Audi, it's hard to go to a Urus or a Bentley Bentayga when all three of those variants are in one conglomerate making an RSQ8. And it's only a few seconds slower in a top speed, a few tenths of a second slower 0 to 60 than a Urus. And they've increased the horsepower and torque for 2025, which unfortunately we missed it this week. They had one, and I was supposed to go 2 weeks ago to the dealership to do it, and somebody came and picked it up. But we will be bringing the new RSQ8 because they increased horsepower and torque this year, which is only like 20, 30 horsepower less than a Urus, and it's a fraction of the price, which is crazy. I do like Aston Martin. The interiors are a little bit, they could have some updates. I think it would look a lot better if they touched up some of the things, especially in the center cluster. I don't mind it when it comes to Acura having that dynamic setup in the center cluster where you push the buttons to change your driving modes. But when it goes into Aston Martin, I feel like it should be a little bit different. You have the BMW i7 branded as a M60. What do you mean? I have the i7 as a M60. So they do have an M60 variant on it. Would you ever get a Bentley SUV? If it was a great deal, I mean, why not? But again, because of the RSQ8, I think I would go to that. The M70, I don't have the M70. Did I mislabel one of the videos? 30K giveaway. 30K giveaway. If somebody had a 30K giveaway, then yeah, definitely get something like that. We are looking into doing some giveaway stuff. We're working with some tax accountants first. So next year, we're going to see what else we can bring to the channel. We're also wanting to do some different traveling where we'll show different vehicles going through different states and stuff. So we have a lot of upcoming things for 2025. We're just waiting to pull the lever more or less because we have to see for tax purposes and insurance purposes, and there's been a lot of different things that's been changed that from 24 to 25. I don't know, just weird how insurance companies change things and how ultimately even the tax codes, they change things a lot. Porsche, you can also get the clear taillights too. Yeah, you can. Did they make the Cayenne S faster? This year there isn't any updates on the Cayenne. I don't recall any updates. I haven't done the 25 variant yet because they haven't had any come off the boat. Porsche has been doing a lot of unique things also to keep the pricing a little higher. So they haven't been bringing a lot of inventory in. So we have several teams, and even with that, we're not able to get certain vehicles in. The Panamera itself had some issues coming in off the boat because of different things, which the EPA and licensing and certifications, which they have till 2025, that they've already certified everything, but they're still having problems bringing some Porsche models in off the boat. So some of them are literally at the port, and in some cases I've even heard where followers or subscribers of the channel, they bought the vehicle and they had to wait 3-4 weeks. Their vehicle was just sitting on a ship. So it's quite interesting what's going on with Porsche, but with Audi, you don't have that. So that's why, you might want to look at some of the Audis because they're doing a lot of amazing things, especially updating horsepower and torque pretty much for every single trim, where they're not just adding technology, they're also changing suspension. They're making the sound deadening better. I mean, I like the way Audi is going with their approach. I do feel that the Q7, they should have entertained maybe some changes to the 3-screen layout because they've been doing it for quite a while. I think it was nice back when they introduced it, but now everybody's doing more of a simplified look. Whereas I'm not saying integrate everything into screens. I kind of still like buttons. I mean, I also have some reviews where I express that, but in some cases, I don't want to have buttons everywhere where it looks like an airplane. So, I mean, it's either or on the two, but for performance-wise, I feel that Audi has done the big updates this year for 25 variants because a lot of their trims are getting that performance bump they need, that refresh they need on the interior, light refreshes on the exterior because it already looks good. I mean, I'm a huge fan of the Matrix design LED headlights and daytime runnings and that animated look that comes into the front and the rear when you lock and unlock the car. I think they do a great job. I would get the Chrono for Porsche. It's kind of, I mean, it doesn't do a huge difference. You usually knock off maybe 0.2 seconds 0 to 60, but it does give you some value. So anything that you add to the vehicle will add value. So it will kind of minus off of the depreciation. Message retract. Oh, because if you just get like a standard vehicle, typically what happens is you're going to get full depreciation. Whereas once you start adding features, those features will start adding some value to the depreciation, even though you're still having a depreciating asset. Well, I really wanted a Cayenne S. Yeah, I'd like a Cayenne S too. They went up a little bit on the price, which every vehicle. We are going to wrap up the live stream for this week. I thank everybody for coming out and all the questions and answers. Please drop comments below to let us know for timing. So if we need to alter the timing and change it up, we will do so to make it a little bit easier for everybody to join. And check out the memberships where we're doing exclusive shorts and exclusive bloopers and rough cuts of the videos. I actually have some interesting ones of Audi and some performance videos, as well as live streams from dealerships that will only be exclusive to members. I'd like to hope everybody has a great holiday. Next week, dealerships, we are going to BMW Mini and Toyota, possibly looking at some other dealerships, but it's going to probably be first of the year where we start going hardcore to get a lot more content. But we have a lot of great vehicles coming, a lot of performance vehicles that will be coming in the next few weeks. And I look forward to seeing you guys next week on the live stream. And I have an X5 plug-in hybrid, I believe, coming out in the next day or two. We have the X5 in competition. We are going to be comparing it against other vehicles. And like I said, I appreciate everybody for coming out. Hope you guys have a great day and enjoy your weekend, and see you on the next review.